Is it even still baiting when there's really nothing on the hook? So I find myself tumbling down a little bit of a rabbit hole today, sort of following up on, I'm not sure it was a suggestion, but a notion that was put into my head from a commenter about a week ago or so, who kind of asked about my opinions on what had been said about the character of Lando Calrissian in the upcoming Solo film. Solo, a Star Wars story. And at the time, I replied to this comment, because I do sometimes, and I said, no, I'm not sure that I'm going to have anything to say about that. But then I dug into a little more, because it had started worming its way into my head, and then I started looking at the bigger picture of this trend that I don't even know what to call yet, and I'll explain why in a minute, but digging into it more, realizing how long it's been going on, I've now transitioned from, I guess that's a little annoying, to being genuinely kind of ticked. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about LGBTQ representation in pop culture. So I'm sure the comment section's going to be great on this. And just because occasionally I do still get people asking, what's with the ring? Let's be as unambiguous about this as I possibly can be. So, reiterating for the folks in the back, my name's Nathaniel. I am queer. I have a fluid sense of gender. I have a dog in this race. So, let's talk about this. Let's start with the thing that actually kicked this whole thing off in my head. Let's start, I'll be going a lot of other places, but let's start with Lando Calrissian in Solo. So, what was said? Jonathan Kasdan, co-writer of the film, he wrote it with Lawrence Kasdan, his father, who is kind of a luminary of the Star Wars universe because he was the writer on Empire Strikes Back. But he was asked about Lando's sexuality because he, of course, has an inclination to flirt with basically everybody. And Kasdan's words were, I have notes on this because I don't want to be paraphrasing. I want to deal with people's exact words on this. So his words were that in reference to Lando Calrissian's sexuality is that there is a fluidity to it. Now, that was sort of framed in various write-ups as Lando being pansexual, and that may or may not have been what Kasdan meant. Some other things he said in the same statement seemed to indicate that way. He talked about LGBTQ representation. Sounds all well and good, except apparently the movie doesn't really back it up. Now, I say that not having actually seen the film. It's not out where I am yet, so I haven't seen it at the time of recording. And if it turns out that my looking into this was completely wrong, I'll mention that when I do my review of that film. But I have dug into people who have seen the film and who address this specific aspect, and it's not backed up. He's flirty with non-female characters, sure. He appears to possibly even be flirty towards Han Solo. And I guess specifically there's a comment from L3, his droid, but as Lawrence Kasdan, Jonathan Kasdan's father and the co-writer, himself points out, it's not entirely clear if that's L3 kind of poking fun at Lando and being a bit of a jerk, because apparently that's L3's character. We're getting our second jerk droid after K2. So, it's not backed up. It's not backed up firmly, despite the fact that one of the writers is talking as if it is made explicit in the film. Now, I don't know how many of you folks are familiar with the term queer baiting. And historically, what that's usually referred to is movies, TV shows that kind of tease and hint at a romantic relationship between two same-sex characters. Usually two men. That's been the more common. So there were folks who accused the BBC show Sherlock of queer baiting and sort of hinting at more than just a friendship between Sherlock and Watson, but also never doing anything with it. There's been accusations of queer baiting with Bucky and Cap in the MCU, with Poe and Finn in Star Wars, and so on and so on and so on. So it goes back a ways. And so you get those kinds of accusations where they're basically almost encouraging fans to like imagine that that's the case without actually putting it in the product itself. I don't even want to call what's going on with Solo and some of the other stuff I'm about to talk about queer baiting, because this in my mind is worse. Queer baiting is something that, at least in the classic examples, some of the ones I mentioned and others like them, that is something where they just the makers just kind of let fandom run rampant and maybe nudge it in a certain way, in order to ingratiate itself to a certain demographic of the audience. And I'm not going to say that's okay, but this is worse in my mind, because this is somebody associated with the film saying explicitly, yes, this is the case, but it's not explicit in the work itself. And this is the latest example. It's not the only one. Let's talk about the big one that I've actually talked about before. And if I've figured out how to do this properly, there'll even be a fun little link there to when I have talked about it before. Dumbledore in Fantastic Beasts, because we've got that coming up, and it was confirmed that his being gay, which is something J.K. Rowling has said since 2008, so it's been on the record from her for a decade now, that Dumbledore is gay, and she always intended him to be gay, that it's not going to appear in the film, where he appears as a young man, and is in a film along with the character that he had romantic feelings towards. And I've done a whole video talking about that, so I don't want to dwell on that too much, but that's another example. And this one, I think, possibly the most egregious, but I am going to talk about some others, because this is one where the writer has said, and you know what? I'm not even mad at her for not making it clear in the Harry Potter books themselves, because honestly, aside from Snape, we don't get into the sexual history of any of the professors. And the only reason it comes up for Snape is because his pining after Lily, Harry's mother, is kind of an important plot point and motivator for why he does things. We don't really get into the sexual history inclinations of any of the other professors, because that's not the story being told. It's being told about the students through the eyes of the students. And they wouldn't know this stuff about their professors. So I was fine with that. But now we're actually doing stories where it's much more explicitly about Dumbledore, and we're still not doing it. You said it was this thing, and you won't back it up. You want some more examples? Because I've got more. Let's see here. Yes. Wonder Woman. In 2016, writer Greg Rucka, who was the at-time current writer on Wonder Woman, said that Wonder Woman was bisexual. That it makes logical sense, and there was a whole explosion of news. Wonder Woman is canonically queer. No, she's not. No, she's not, because it still has not been made explicit in the main continuity of DC Comics. Has she been hinted at being queer? Yeah. Since she was first being written in the 40s, she's been hinted at being queer. Hinted is not explicit. And has she ever been shown to be explicitly queer? Yes. Not in main continuity. Grant Morrison wrote her as explicitly queer in Earth 1, but that's the multiverse. That's an alternate timeline. That is not the main continuity. That is not something that actually has to be accepted or dealt with by either DC itself as a whole or fans as an entity. So he said 2 years ago, yeah, she's queer. And we've seen nothing since then. Now, if you want to argue to me that it's in his mind writing, and that regardless of what he thinks, DC would not let him make it explicit, I'm even prepared to believe that. But if DC won't let him put it in the work, and he's not going to say that DC is not letting him put it in there, I would rather he just keep his mouth shut, because it's not helping. And that's what's infuriating about all this. It's being presented as a publicity thing, as a way to garner favoritism, as a way to score brownie points. Because you're looking at LGBTQ fans, readers, audiences, allies, and going, yeah, we know. We got your back. Yeah, no. You know we know, right? Right? No, we don't, because you won't say it. And the failure of these various entities to say it and make it explicit and make it text, not subtext, but text, it's not okay. And you don't get points for that. You shouldn't get points for that. In fact, you should be getting demerits for that. 10 points from Gryffindor. Gone. You don't get to bank goodwill from a population that you will not actually put out and make explicit as being part of your universe. You say all these things behind the scenes. Oh, it was in my mind while writing it. Oh yeah, well, I can't say it, but it's there. You know what you're doing when you do that? You're putting us in the closet. We're in the closet enough on our own. You don't need to put us in the closet by proxy. You don't need to put characters that you're saying are like us in the closet. Because that's what you're doing if you're saying, oh yeah, sure, they're LGBTQ, but you're not putting it in the work. Because until it's in the work, then it's not real. Because I've talked about authorial intent before. You can intend all you want for a character to be gay, to be lesbian, to be queer, to be questioning, to be whatever. But if you don't put it in some way explicit, no one, no reader, no future writer, nobody is under any obligation to actually acknowledge or deal with it. They can choose to ignore it for as long as it's not explicit. And there are examples of doing it right. But before we get to that, I've got more for you. So, sticking with Star Wars. Admiral Holdo, played by Laura Dern in The Last Jedi. Oh boy, this one ticked me off because obviously she was visually coded queer with the purple hair, and there was certain stripes of media who are like, total SJW, Tumblr bait, and there was also in a novel, and again, big deal was made about this. There was a novel where it was hinted at that she might be some variety of LGBTQ. But first off, not in the film. Secondly, even if you want to tell me that the novel in which this little snippet appears is canonical, which I believe it's supposed to be, even that is not explicit. It's a conversation that she has with Leia about romantic entanglements. And you can possibly read it as her implying that she has an interest beyond the male gender, but honestly, reading the thing, it reads more like she is expressing an open-mindedness beyond the human species, because she's naming alternate species, and then it's hinted that maybe the next thing she was about to say was that she also had an interest in women, but she doesn't finish that sentence. Leia cuts her off and says something else. So again, at best, it's implied, it's subtext. It's a novel. It's not even the film. It's the thing a minority of people are ever going to see. And you still won't confirm it. You want another? How about 2012? Headline: Green Lantern is gay. No, he wasn't. Green Lantern, to most people's mind, if they know who the character is at all, it's Hal Jordan. It's Jon Stewart. Maybe it's Kyle Rayner. Maybe, if you're a very particularly odd stripe of fan, maybe it's Guy Gardner. You know who most people don't think of first, or second, or probably even third? Alan Scott, the technically original Green Lantern. So, it wasn't any of the current Green Lanterns who was revealed to be gay. It was the Green Lantern that is the least well known. And it wasn't even the actual version of him. It was the Earth 2 version of him. So again, alternate reality, not the main continuity, not canon, messing about elsewhere. and everyone can ignore it who doesn't like it. You get a brief little pop, you get a little, oh, that's great, from people who are dying for representation, because we do want representation. We do. But we want actual representation that matters, not alternate universe representation that can be ignored, and not implied representation, which at this point is just f***ing worthless as far as I'm concerned. Now, is that to say that you can never imply that it must always be explicit? No. I'll give you an example of a case where a character's status as non-hetero is only implied, but I'm totally okay with it. How to Train Your Dragon 2, the character of Gobber the Belch. He has a line when referring to a married couple. I forget exactly what happens that sets it up, but he says something like, and that's why I never got married. That and one other reason. Now, that line in and of itself does not make it explicit that he's gay. And that's the reason he said that. It could be any number of other things. The guy's already physically damaged. He's got an artificial arm. Maybe he's implying that his junk is burned off by a dragon at some point. Who knows? But here's the thing. It was confirmed by both the actor and the director after the film started screening. They didn't make a deal of it beforehand. They didn't talk to the press about this wonderful thing that they included and how this wonderful instance of inclusion in their film. No, they just put it in and people started seeing it. And only when people, after seeing that line, went, does he mean what I think he means? And asked, did they say, yes, actually, it does mean what you think it means. So if you just want to imply and you don't want to make it explicit, fine. You can do that. What you can't do is go on publicity tours milking goodwill from a group, a very wide-ranging, diverse group of people who want representation and want to know that they have allies. You can't tell them you've got their back when you don't. Not really. And now we get to the one that actually might possibly tick me off most of all. Beauty and the Beast. LeFou. In the live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast. Played by Josh Gad. Now, I've not seen this film in its entirety. I refuse. Not because of this, because I fundamentally have an issue with Disney's live-action remakes of their animated films in the first place. I talked about that a couple of years ago, why I hate that. But I did look up specific scenes with LeFou, including the supposed, and allow me to use director Bill Condon's exact words here, the supposed exclusively gay moment. LeFou is not explicitly gay. I have absolutely no doubt that Josh Gad had him being gay in mind when he played him, because he plays him very effeminately. But at best, that's feeding it stereotypes. Effeminate does not have to mean gay. It's coded to mean gay, yes, annoyingly, but that's not anything in and of itself. That's nothing more than a wink and a nod. There's a line where Gaston says, you know, why hasn't a girl snatched you up? And this is your opportunity to make it explicit. He could have said any number of things. He could have said, oh, I don't know. I just don't know if I get girls, or anything like that. That would have been your chance to make it explicit. But he didn't. Instead, it was a line about, they tell me I'm clingy. That doesn't mean gay. Unless I missed a meeting and clingy is now synonymous with gay, that doesn't count. Except, of course, I suppose, stereotypically, women are considered clingy, whereas men aren't. It's another feminine trait. So we're at the effeminate thing again. So at best, you're stereotyping. But then we get to the exclusively gay moment. At the very end, characters dancing. We're in our happy ending. And LeFou, in the course of a dance, where, you know, there's switching of partners, he finds himself dancing with a man, and there's a moment of, huh. And that's it. It doesn't linger. They don't pause. There's no kiss. It's not even LeFou's choice to be dancing with this guy. He didn't go up and ask him to dance. He didn't seek him out. He didn't go out of his way to end up with this guy as his dance partner. It just happens, and he looks happy about it. That's not an exclusively gay moment. If he had had agency, if it had been clearly his choice as opposed to, at best, a happy coincidence, then you could claim your exclusively gay moment. And you could trumpet and try and score your brownie points for having a quote-unquote openly gay character in a PG Disney family film. But you didn't do that. And what you did doesn't warrant any merit, any brownie points. 0. And it's not too late to fix these things. They can be fixed. They can be done correctly. Harley Quinn. It has been implied for years. Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy were more than just friends. It was first explored explicitly in DC Bombshells. Alternate universe. But that doesn't make my list of ones I have a problem with. Because it was made explicit in Harley Quinn Annual number 1. After DC Rebirth. In the main continuity, we got this. Affectionate, romantic, sexually charged, explicit. That is a kiss. That is a loving hand on a face. That is a hand grabbing an ass. No question. There it is. After years of stringing us along the way these other things have done, we got it. We were given firmly the confirmation. Because that's what we need. We need confirmation. You can't just keep nudging us and going, I mean, we don't have to say it, right? You know, we know, you know, we know. No. If you're not going to have our backs, don't come to us for brownie points. Because you don't deserve them. This entire thing is cynical, infuriating, demeaning, patronizing. We should be happy that we have this implied inclusion. Inclusion is a wonderful thing. Inclusion is a vital thing. Inclusion helps people not feel like abominations. Being able to look at a screen or page and see something that they feel represents themselves and a character that they can connect with in a way that maybe they don't see in their day-to-day lives can help them feel not wrong in their own skin. Representation matters. Representation is important. And when representation happens, it should be celebrated. Excepting when it's just straight up stereotypical, in which case that's its own can of worms to be dealt with. But this crap that is going on with Solo, with Beauty and the Beast, with Wonder Woman, with Dumbledore. That's not representation. You're not giving us anything. Smoke and mirrors, and you want a pat on the back for it. Well, you're not getting it. Not from me. And I think increasingly not from the public at large. People are starting to see through this. I don't know how many people are as angry as I am about it, but they're starting to see through it. So either explicitly back us up, give us representation, confirm that we f***ing exist, or if you're not going to do that, shut up. I don't want to hear any more about how this character or that character is a representation of the LGBTQ community when it's at best a vague implication. We don't need you to tell us there's subtext. We can find the subtext ourselves. That's what we've been doing for decades, reading ourselves into characters that are not explicitly made to represent us because that's what we've had to do. Because you won't give us real representation. We will read into ourselves mutants in the X-Men, monsters in monster movies. We will read ourselves into whoever is the downtrodden or the repressed or the character who is not allowed to be themselves. We will read ourselves into that because we have to until you start giving us something real. So either do that or go away. I think that's about it. I think I hit everything I had. Taking a breath, checking my notes. Oh, just one more I'll shout out. Be gay. Iceman being confirmed gay. Bobby Drake from the X-Men being confirmed as gay. Well done, well handled. And that was a case where technically it was a retcon, but it put everything into a new perspective for that character. That was well handled. It can be done well. It can be done right. But if you're not going to do it well, you're not going to do it right, stop acting like you did some great thing. If all you want to do is imply, fine. Imply all you want. But don't act like you did more than that. So there is my thoughts, my rant, my very visceral anger at this next level of queer baiting that is going on. So what are your thoughts on all of this? Assuming, that I didn't just scare everybody off. Whatever your thoughts are, even if you disagree with me, even if you vehemently disagree with me, please do so respectfully. Don't use pejorative terms and don't use personal attacks. If you disagree with me, I'll be happy to hear from it. If you do agree with me, I'll hear that too, whatever your thoughts are. As long as you can keep them respectful, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's stuff to do. If you like what I do, you can support me on Patreon and help make this show better and help fund bigger projects, bigger things. I've got a podcast I do with my partner called Punch Like a Girl. I'm on Twitter. I've got t-shirts for sale, all that stuff. Links for all that stuff down in the description. So until next time, friends, lovers, true allies, this council is adjourned.